Welcome to week 2 of the Be Well Mindfully Mindfulness Training Program. Today's topic will focus on our relationship with our thoughts. The mind is a powerful thing. It takes in all information from both our internal and external environments in order to orient us to what is happening, as well as gauge what we think about what is happening and how we feel about it. It has been said that it is not only an event that causes us distress, but also how we think about the event. Often, we become so fused with our thoughts that instead of regarding them as merely thoughts, we confuse them with reality. Our beliefs, our perceptions, and our thoughts all have parts to play in the ways in which we experience the world. The ways in which we process our experiences tend to reinforce our beliefs. The cognitive appraisal theory proposed by researchers Lazarus and Folkman suggests our human emotions arise from our appraisals or beliefs about things. When we encounter events throughout our lives, we go through a process of evaluating, interpreting, and explaining the events. This initial primary appraisal process involves judging the level of threat. We determine first if the event is beneficial to us, neutral, or perhaps even harmful. If we judge the event as threatening, we engage in secondary appraisal processes to assess our abilities to cope with or overcome the stressor, along with our perceived benefits of acting or avoiding the threat. For example, if you are exercising and you feel an uncomfortable sensation in your muscles, you may first ask yourself, is this just because my muscles are tired or fatigued because I'm doing a strenuous workout, or is it a painful feeling? If it's a painful feeling, you might then begin to question if it's just a short-lived tinge of discomfort or maybe a sign of injury. If you determine that it is a sign of injury, you will then begin to question your ability to cope with the pain and what your next step should be. This cognitive theory plays an important role in post-traumatic stress and chronic pain, as our abilities to cope with and recover from both are highly intertwined with our thoughts, beliefs, and appraisals regarding the condition. While this is not meant to be a deep dive into all the ways that appraisals and thoughts interact with post-traumatic stress symptoms and pain, we hope to provide you with enough background information into why thoughts and appraisals are important. So let's first start with the relationship between trauma and appraisals. Following a traumatic event, it is not uncommon to develop shame-based appraisals or thoughts of self-blame. These often include thoughts such as, I'm responsible for what happened, it's all my fault, I should have seen this coming, I should have fought harder to prevent this, and other similar thoughts. Additionally, many people have beliefs about what the fact that the trauma happened means about them as people. For example, they may have developed the belief that they are weak, ineffectual, that they make bad decisions, or that they are disgusting, dirty, or in some way shameful as a result of what happened. While thoughts such as this are not uncommon, they often serve to keep people stuck in post-traumatic stress symptoms and eventually may lead an individual to develop full post-traumatic stress disorder. It is also common following a stressful or traumatic event to develop thoughts and beliefs related to what is safe or unsafe, and similarly, what you can and cannot cope with. Oftentimes, we see that these beliefs lead to avoidance. For example, individuals with post-traumatic stress symptoms or PTSD may avoid going out to crowded spaces such as restaurants or grocery stores. Similarly, someone who is involved in a traumatic car accident, for example, may avoid things that remind them of the accident, such as certain roads or even driving altogether. Individuals with interpersonal trauma, which is broadly defined as trauma that occurs between people, such as interpersonal violence, may avoid relationships or certain types of intimacy. You may also avoid physical reminders, such as going past a certain location, or mental reminders, such as certain thoughts or even feelings. It is not uncommon for individuals to experience changes in their emotional responses as a form of avoidance as well. For example, someone may become emotionally under-controlled, experiencing strong emotional waves or crises over seemingly small daily occurrences in order to avoid focusing on the traumatic event at the heart of their distress. Alternatively, someone else may become emotionally over-controlled to avoid feeling the negative feelings associated with the trauma. Emotionally over-controlled people may report that they feel numb and do not experience any negative emotions related to the trauma. However, in these instances, most people also report an inability to feel positive emotions or feelings as well. Avoidance is a hallmark PTSD symptom and a common reaction to trauma. While it's natural to want to avoid thinking about or feeling emotions related to a traumatic event, avoidance can be damaging in the long run. When avoidance is extreme, or if it's the main strategy that you use to cope, it can interfere with your emotional recovery and quality of life. If you avoid certain situations because you believe they are unsafe, you will never give yourself the opportunity to learn that the situation may not be as unsafe as you believe. Similarly, avoidance can be harmful because the circle of avoidance typically widens over time. For example, a veteran returning from Iraq may avoid things that remind them of their deployment, such as war movies, certain foods, or desert landscapes. On the surface, this may look like a relatively small group of things to avoid and may not impact the veteran's day-to-day life very much. However, what we typically see is that individuals begin to avoid more and more things over time. For example, they may begin to avoid any areas with a dusty, arid, or warm smell because it reminds them of the desert, which reminds them of Iraq. As this circle of avoidance widens, the person will need to avoid more and more. Over time, instead of avoiding only a few things, you may need to avoid many things, which take great effort to avoid. This significant avoidance will begin to impact your quality of life and keep you from doing the things that once brought you joy and pleasure. It is also important to consider the relationship between chronic pain and appraisals. Similar to what we just covered about beliefs and trauma, one way appraisals about pain can influence recovery is through avoidance. For example, if you hold the belief that pain is harmful or dangerous, you may avoid situations or tasks that elicit pain. For someone with chronic pain, it is not uncommon for physically strenuous activity to cause discomfort or even pain. As such, many individuals with chronic pain report restricting their movement or activity. While some forms of movement restriction, such as activity pacing, can be helpful to manage pain, complete avoidance of physical activity may be harmful in the long run. In fact, research has shown that when people with chronic pain avoid movement, they are more likely to suffer higher rates of disability and delayed physical recovery. Additionally, restricting activities often leads chronic pain sufferers to feel as though they've missed out on certain activities in life. Perhaps it's a vacation, a night out with friends, or certain family activities. As we discussed with trauma and avoidance, if our chronic pain leads us to avoid activities and in our daily lives over time, it will likely negatively impact our well-being and quality of life. Our beliefs about pain can influence our mood and mental states in a wide variety of ways. You may feel that your pain is unjust and that it is not fair that you are experiencing discomfort. Or you may feel grief as you mourn the things that your body may no longer be able to do. In fact, many people who experience chronic pain endorse beliefs that they are in some way damaged or a shell of their former selves. It's no surprise that these types of negative appraisals, both about our pain and ourselves, can negatively impact our mood and mental health. What you may or may not know is that negative mood states can also impact your body and perceptions of pain. For example, feelings of anxiety may contribute to muscle tension that can become painful over time. Similarly, people who report depressed mood often also report higher pain intensity. When trauma and pain are related to one another, such as pain resulting from a traumatic accident or combat injury, our appraisals can also be intertwined. For someone with chronic pain originating from a traumatic event, the experience of pain may trigger reminders of their trauma. It's not uncommon for individuals to say such things as, "When I feel that sharp pain in my leg, it reminds me of my accident," or "It reminds me of when I was shot in Iraq." If you are someone with pain related to trauma, it is likely that at least some of your appraisals and beliefs surrounding your pain and trauma are highly intertwined. Research has shown that individuals with trauma-related pain may experience higher levels of self-blame, avoidance, and catastrophic thinking related to their pain than people with pain unrelated to a traumatic event. This statement is not meant to worry you if you are someone that falls into the trauma-related pain category. Rather, it can be helpful to begin to see just how intertwined our thoughts may be. This awareness allows us to name our thoughts and feelings in order to tame them. Again, this is not meant to be an extensive introduction to the relationship between appraisals and chronic pain and trauma. Rather, our goal was to illustrate some common beliefs individuals with chronic pain or trauma may hold and why they're so important to consider in recovery. Appraisals and beliefs are often the focus of pain and PTSD treatments. Different treatments or interventions approach appraisals and beliefs differently depending on their theoretical background. We believe that much of our suffering comes from how we relate to our beliefs and thoughts. As such, throughout this training, we will focus on building awareness of our thoughts and our reactions to those thoughts. Once you have built awareness to notice the thoughts and feelings are coming up for you, we will ask you to focus on just noticing those thoughts without judgment. As we discuss later in this video, our goal is to be able to observe our thoughts about pain and trauma as if they are just passing clouds in the sky. Oftentimes, our thoughts may feel automatic, as if they are happening to us rather than something we choose to happen. When we choose to use mindfulness to hit the pause button, we can decrease stress and anxiety in our daily lives. Using the acronym STOP, we can outline a very simple and effective method for bringing our bodies and minds back into balance. The letters of STOP stand for stop, take a breath, observe, and then proceed. There may be many times during the day that you are unaware of what's happening inside you. By taking a moment to stop, take a breath, and observe what is happening, including your own thoughts, emotions, and sensations, you can connect with your experience and then proceed and respond more effectively. This practice is revealing. Perhaps your shoulders are tense, your jaw is clenched, or your body is otherwise filled with tension. Perhaps you're hungry, tired, or just in need of a break. Maybe it's simply time to remind yourself to come back into the present moment. You can practice any time you feel tense or upset, or any time you like. You might choose to do this practice before or after certain activities, or you might even want to schedule various times during the day to stop and check in with yourself. We know people who have created pop-up reminders in their smartphones or computers once every hour to remind them. Be creative and find different ways to prompt yourself to stop and come back into the moment. We each can become an active participant in the management of our own health and develop the potential to experience any moment, no matter how difficult or intense, with more balance and peace. This skill is simple. In fact, it is so simple that you may find yourself wondering if it can truly be that helpful. If you remember back to last week's video, it is very easy for us to slip into autopilot mode without even recognizing it. A great example is chronic pain. Research has shown that many people continue to feel chronic pain even after their original injury has healed, because the pathways in their brain become so used to sending pain signals that they begin to do so automatically even after the source of the pain has subsided. It's important to note that this is not saying that pain does not exist. Rather, at the onset of the pain, it created a pain memory that our brains are holding on to. Over time, our brains are conditioned to associate stimuli such as certain behaviors and situations with pain. When we form this link, future presentation of the paired stimuli will elicit the pain response automatically. In doing so, our brains may treat pain as a light switch, either on or off, pain severity at 100 or 0. Using the stop skill to pause and observe our sensations allows us to treat pain as a dial with different intensities. You may still be experiencing pain, but perhaps rather than pain at level 100, you may notice that your pain is at level 60. It is important to recognize that our thoughts generate and influence our emotions, and vice versa. Emotions can reinforce our thoughts and make them seem more real. For example, if someone has thoughts that something bad will happen to them if they go out into public, and then they begin to feel anxiety when they attempt to do so, they may use their emotions of fear to justify their thoughts, as if they proved that the existence of the thought was valid and correct. We call this emotional reasoning. Our emotions help us recognize and identify our needs, and at the same time, they form the basis of decision-making processes in our everyday life. Practicing mindfulness allows us to recognize thoughts as thoughts and emotions as emotions. This is a vital step in working with the reactions to stress and pain by slowly replacing automatic reactions with mindful responses. Feelings are a part of our genetic makeup and are crucial for our survival. We decide on a very basic level often before any sensory information can even reach our thinking minds, whether we regard any given situation or event as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Each of these three evaluations triggers its own series of thoughts, feelings, and reactions. If we have a neutral experience, we don't give it a lot of attention. In other words, we don't ponder it for long, so our emotional reaction to the neutral event is indifference. An unpleasant experience generates a reaction aimed at either minimizing, ending, or escaping from that experience. Denial and avoidance are tools often used to suppress memories of the experience or as an attempt to avoid repeating the event in the future. To do this, we start to analyze the situation, to question it, brood over it, and worry about it. We want to get away from it, so our automatic response is a flight reaction accompanied by feelings ranging from fear, rejection, denial, or guilt. Similarly, we may respond with a fight reaction with feelings such as irritation, anger, or rage. Oftentimes, these fight reactions do not have a particular target and may be readily unleashed at who or whatever crosses our path. All of these reactions are perfectly natural and even have survival functions, as they help us gauge whether a situation is helpful or harmful for us. In our everyday lives, we are rarely faced with a life or death situation. Therefore, it is important to recognize our emotional patterns clearly so that our lives are not controlled by them. It's easy to get caught up in habitual styles of thinking that keep you feeling stuck. Because these thinking patterns can occur unconsciously, it helps to become familiar with them so you can be mindful of when you might be falling into a thought trap. With increased awareness of our styles of thinking comes the opportunity to choose to look at a situation differently or to view your thoughts as simply events rather than facts. Just being aware, without judgment, of our thoughts allows you to step outside of them and gain more insights into your inner workings. In other words, it will allow you to work more skillfully with your mind instead of letting your mind control you. Building awareness of our thoughts and emotions can be easier said than done. Before we discuss identifying thoughts and emotions, it may be helpful to discuss some things that commonly get in the way of building this awareness. There are a number of barriers to awareness of emotions and thoughts, with 4 being especially noteworthy. The first barrier is that sometimes emotions and thoughts are invalidated or otherwise discounted. If this happened while you were growing up and you were told that there's no reason to be anxious, fearful, sad, or angry when that's how you felt, it may have taught you not only to think that you aren't the best judge of your own emotions, but also that you should repress them. Emotions are meant to come and go just like everything else. When they're constrained or repressed, it creates stress in the mind and body. The same is true for our thoughts. Commonly used therapies and treatments for PTSD and chronic pain rely on challenging thoughts or cognitions that are believed to be maladaptive. Such approaches may serve to invalidate our thoughts. While these therapies are very effective, many mindfulness-based treatments approach thoughts in a different way. From a mindfulness perspective, It is important that we learn to develop a relationship with things that we struggle with, rather than fighting against them. The second barrier to being aware of thoughts and emotions is the common error of confusing the two. Whenever you say, "I feel that," you're probably actually about to describe a thought or judgment rather than an emotion. For example, a client named Julie used to say, "I feel that my life is out of control." As she learned to make a distinction between thoughts and feelings, she became aware that out of control is a thought, not a feeling. She began to notice that emotions of anxiety and confusion were connected to the thought out of control, and that they also manifested in her body as tension in the chest and shoulders. She used this as a signal for her emotional state and a reminder to turn her awareness to differentiating between thoughts and emotions. When Julie felt anxious and then actually looked at the evidence for her life being out of control, she realized that she was actually in control of many aspects of her life. To further clarify this point, consider statements like "I feel stupid," "I feel worthless," or "I feel helpless." Again, the thought may be "I'm stupid," or "I am worthless," or "helpless," but the emotions would be something like shame, sadness, or fear. When thoughts are confused with emotions, it's often because the emotions are masked behind thoughts in an unconscious attempt to protect yourself from awareness of the emotion. A third barrier to awareness of thoughts and emotions is that they're intangible and therefore challenging to define. At some point growing up, you learned that a flower is a flower because someone pointed it out to you and told you the name. You could feel it, see it, and touch it. But no one can definitively point to a feeling or thought related to fear, sadness, or guilt. So when you were growing up, you had to experience and decipher these on your own. The fourth barrier is that most of us simply don't have adequate vocabulary in regards to emotions and thoughts. Many of us grew up in a culture where experiencing and discussing emotions was not encouraged, and therefore we didn't learn to describe feelings. To help you develop a richer emotional vocabulary, it can be helpful to look up simple lists of different emotions and how they intersect. For example, if you feel a great sense of happiness, you may be feeling joy. If you are experiencing joy along with a sense of anticipation, this emotion may be optimism. Similarly, it may be a struggle for some people to put their thoughts into words. Most of us tend to lean towards either the emotional or cognitive awareness side of the spectrum, meaning that they have an easier time identifying either how they are feeling or how they are thinking. Through the process of mindfulness, you can begin to build awareness of which side of the spectrum you lie. Additionally, you can begin to balance your skills in both the cognitive and emotional realms so that you may begin to see that thoughts and emotions are intertwined and they do not exist separately. One important step in this journey is building awareness of how specific emotions manifest in our bodies. With sustained mindfulness practice, we can become increasingly aware of our feelings and develop the ability to distinguish between pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral experiences. The next step is to observe the chain of reaction that follows an experience, the thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and physical sensations that accompany them. By allowing an experience to occur simply by saying yes or hello to it, a bodily reaction can ensue. Maybe our rib cage expands, or we find ourselves breathing more deeply, or you might notice a relaxed sensation in the abdomen and stomach area. If we say no to an experience, this may trigger other physical sensations. For some, it may feel like contraction. You may notice tension in your forehead or shoulders. You might clench your hands into fists. In fact, this may explain why individuals with PTSD or post-traumatic stress symptoms experience higher levels of muscle tension and gastrointestinal distress. Similarly, as we discussed earlier, our worries and anxieties related to the experience of pain may lead to changes in our bodies that make the pain feeling more intense. Our feelings invariably manifest themselves as physical reactions, which may be subtle or even completely unconscious, and this is where mindfulness comes into play. Rather than pursuing a chain of thoughts, such as, I don't like this pain in my stomach, for example, we may stay with the physical sensation of pain and pressure as much as we can. We can support ourselves by asking, what sensations am I aware of? Through mindfulness, we can stay present with the physical sensation rather than be carried away by thoughts and judgments about them. So how can we become familiar with our feelings without being overrun by them? How can we feel our feelings without over-identifying with them? At the same time, how can we avoid repressing or denying those feelings? Developing the ability to acknowledge our feelings, to know them for what they are, and allow them to just be without fearing them is a big step toward healing as well as being wholly aware of ourselves. Every feeling is composed of a mixture of mental activities and physical sensations that often come together to form specific thoughts about the sensations. Through practicing mindfulness, we become increasingly aware that we cannot control thoughts and feelings that may arise. What we can do is make a conscious choice to be mindful of whatever surfaces. Here are a few steps that you can take when encountering a difficult or unpleasant feeling. First, pause and be aware of your breathing. Become aware of any sensations in your body. Ask yourself, where exactly in my body is this sensation, and what do I feel there? As best you can, stay with that sensation for a few moments. Next, name the emotion present without identifying yourself with it. For example, we may say, there is fear, there is anger, or there is grief, rather than saying, I am fearful, I am angry, or I am grieving. Naming this feeling will help you tame it and allow you to feel and stay in contact with that emotion. Next, accept that the emotion is present, whatever it is, and allow yourself to sense it. Continue to be present as best you can with whatever you experience. If it proves too difficult, you may return to awareness of breathing, and when you're ready, start again. Or you may decide to continue at another time. However, it is important to note that oftentimes feelings of stress or pain are accompanied by an urge to avoid. This is the opposite of mindfulness, and through our practice, we want to continue to work and bring awareness and acceptance to whatever we may feel in the present moment. At the end of the meditation, ask yourself, what do I need right now? What would be helpful for me right now? It is best to start by practicing with an emotion that is not too strong. As we progress through the training, we will start to turn toward more difficult emotions. But for now, we can start small. For instance, maybe a mild reluctance to tackle a particular task. Whenever you encounter this reluctance, pause and then become aware of the physical sensation accompanying the emotion. Be as kind to yourself as possible. In the next step, try to express the emotion in words. For example, you might tell yourself, I feel reluctance. I accept this reluctance right now. It is okay for me to feel this way. Stay with the emotion for a few moments, and when you're ready, ask yourself if it has changed in any way, and if so, how. Just as we can locate and observe our emotions, we can do the same with our thoughts. For some people, it may be easier to identify their thoughts rather than their emotions. Conversely, some people may say that they have no problem identifying their emotions, but struggle to identify what thoughts triggered those feelings. Thoughts are the vehicles of emotion. When we experience an emotion, whether positive or negative, there tends to be a thought that the emotion is attached to. In most instances, we can control how or if our feelings are expressed, but this can be more challenging with thoughts. Thoughts can arise from our subconscious, and we rarely choose what thoughts will arise or when and how they will appear. Often, the thoughts we experience, particularly those related to stress or pain, become automatic habitual styles of thinking. These cycles produce thoughts, emotions, and behaviors of which we are barely aware. We can, however, get some perspective on these thoughts. To do this, we need to first become aware of our thoughts. It does not take long when you start to develop a practice of mindfulness before you realize that we are continually bombarded by thoughts. A common misconception about mindfulness is that to be mindful, we must find a way to sweep all thought from our mind. In reality, this is far from the truth. Rather, The objective of mindfulness is to build awareness of these thoughts. It is as if you were observing your thoughts as a scientist and asking yourself questions such as, what is the nature of this thought? Where does it come from? What feelings come along with this thought? When you start to take away the judgments of these thoughts, that they are good thoughts, bad thoughts, maybe even annoying thoughts, you begin to see that you are not your thoughts. This awareness helps us separate to observe our thoughts as if they were outside of us. To accomplish this, it can be helpful to think of your thoughts as clouds. Imagine yourself observing your thoughts as if they were clouds in the sky. By doing so, you can learn something about the nature of your mind, and that is that your thoughts come and go if you let them, that you don't have to react to them or believe them, judge them, or get caught up with them. You can just notice these thoughts and let them drift by. When you are mindful, you can learn that the present moment is always changing. Accepting what is and what you are experiencing is a pathway to change and to freedom from suffering. When you put space between you and your reactions to your thoughts, it changes your relationship to your thoughts. You can watch them come and go instead of treating them like facts. Now that we have discussed our relationship with our thoughts and building awareness of our thoughts and emotions, it's time to delve into today's activity. Today's activity will use what we have already learned so far and put it into practice. This activity is called Mindful Sitting with Awareness. Begin your practice by congratulating yourself that you're dedicating some precious time to meditation. As you begin to stop and become present, become aware of the body and mind and whatever is being carried with you. Perhaps feelings or thoughts from the day's events, or whatever has been going on with you recently. Simply allow and acknowledge whatever is within and just let it be. Without any form of analysis or evaluation, gradually shift the focus of awareness to the breath, breathing normally and naturally. As you breathe in, be aware of breathing in, and as you breathe out, be aware of breathing out. Just being aware of breathing and focusing awareness on either the tip of the nose or the abdomen. If focusing on the abdomen, feel the belly expanding with each inhale and contracting with each exhale. Just living life one inhalation and one exhalation at a time. As you breathe in and breathe out, watch each breath appear and disappear. just breathing. Now gently withdraw awareness from the breath and bring it into the world of sensations in the body, observing without any aversion or indulgence. Just acknowledge the multitude of varying sensations as they come and change from moment to moment, and just let them be. As you sense into the body, you may find areas of tension and tightness. If you can allow them to soften and relax, that's fine. If not, just let it be. If you are unable to soften and relax, acknowledge any persisting sensations and give them space to do whatever they need to do. Simply allow these waves of sensations to flow wherever they need to go. Now, release awareness of sensations and bring attention to hearing, observing all sounds without aversion or indulgence. Be aware of sound at its most basic, fundamental level. Simply sound waves that your body is receiving within its faculty of hearing. Be aware of sound at this level. Just acknowledge the multitude of varying sounds, external and internal, moment to moment. Whether the sounds are external or internal, just notice how they are ever changing, revealing the mark of impermanence. Sounds rise, sounds fall. Hear them appear and disappear, just sounds. Now gently shift attention from awareness of sounds to the mind, to thoughts and emotions. Observe the mind without any aversion or indulgence. Just acknowledge the multitude of varying mental formations, moment to moment. Like lying in a field and watching the clouds float by, watch the mind in the same way. Watch your thoughts without judgment, just being with the way things are. Thoughts and emotions rise. Thoughts and emotions fall. Experiencing them appear and disappear. Just thoughts, just emotions. You may become aware that the mind has a mind of its own. It analyzes, scrutinizes, plans, and remembers. It catastrophizes, compares, and contrasts. It fantasizes and has likes and dislikes. The mind is busy thinking about this and that, with thoughts rising, forming, and receding. Experience how they appear and disappear, noticing them as just thoughts. As you observe and experience your thoughts and emotions, try to avoid falling into them. Rather than getting caught up in the mind's traps, stories, and habits, simply observe them dispassionately. Let them be and know that they will recede in time. At times you may find yourself caught up in thoughts and feelings, perhaps again and again. When this happens, don't judge or berate yourself. Simply realize that even this awareness is a way of returning to the present moment. Let your awareness recognize that all of these mental states are fleeting and changing, once again revealing impermanence. Once you become aware that your mind has gotten caught up and lost in thoughts and emotions, in that very moment you are no longer caught up. Just continue experiencing the changing nature of mind states. You can consider your mind to be like a whitewater river, just thoughts and emotions rolling on and on. If you become frustrated with wandering mind, it's fine to return to the breath for a short time to center yourself. Very gently now, withdraw awareness from mental events and bring your attention to the present itself as the primary object of attention. Choiceless awareness invites you to become mindful of whatever is arising in the unfolding of each present moment, in the body and in the mind, whether sounds, sensations, or other sensory experiences, a flurry of thoughts or emotions. Just sit back and watch the ever-shifting tides of mind and body. Although you may be sitting very still, your internal experience is quite different. Your body and your mind continue to combine to form a dynamic organism, interacting with stimuli from the senses and the mind, stimuli that's constantly changing. Simply observe whatever is dominant or compelling in your mind and body and be present to it. If nothing is particularly prevalent and you are unsure of where to focus attention, you can always go back to the breath or any other object as a way to anchor into the here and now. This practice is analogous to sitting by the edge of a river, just watching whatever goes downstream. Sometimes there are sounds, sometimes sensations, sometimes thoughts and emotions. If nothing much is occurring, you can always come back to the anchor of the breath. Sit and witness the sea of change in your mind and body as you learn to give space to whatever is arising inside with greater equanimity and balance. You can begin to go with the flow. Instead of fighting or resisting what's there, you'll come to understand and deeply know that all things change. Even if you're experiencing storms of anxiety, pain, stress, sadness, anger, or confusion, especially at these times, you will know that by giving these feelings space, they will gradually diminish. Now withdraw from choiceless awareness and come back to the breath, feeling the whole body as you breathe in and out. Feel the entire body rising up on an inhale and falling downward on an exhale. Feel the body as a single, complete organism, connected and whole. May you again congratulate yourself for practicing this meditation and know that it is contributing to your health and well-being. You have now completed the instruction portion of week 3 of the Be Well Mindfully Mindfulness Training Program. Please remember to complete the daily mindfulness training activities displayed on the website below this video. Additionally, be sure to tune in next week for the final week of the Be Well Mindfully Training Program. As always, thank you for taking the time to participate in this program and learn more about mindfulness practice.